Bob, congratulations. How many people do you employ just to dust off your Emmys?
It's a small but loyal and dedicated staff, Dan.
Have you? Do you know how many you have?
I do because someone told me.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, they told me I had 27, so I guess this makes 28.
Pretty impressive. What's it mean to you, though, when you see it? Like, do you remember the first one you won?
Oh, yeah. The first one I won was sometime in the mid-'80s, around 1986 or something like that. And at that point, they hadn't separated the host and play-by-play categories. And I was hosting the NFL on NBC, but also doing Saturday afternoon baseball with Tony Kubek. And at that time, it was a television show. And Alan Thicke was the host. They did it that way, and he was the host. There was another year, I think, when Dennis Miller hosted it. It was like a 3 or 4 year stretch of time where it was unsyndicated and played back like a week later. So I recall that.
What's the event?
And we wore tuxedos. People made it was more of a formal event than it is now.
What's the event that you wish you would have covered, had the opportunity to cover in your career?
You know, you asked me this a few years ago, and I guess the answer is, just as a bucket list thing, I'm not going to change what my answer is. It's the Masters, but there's no reason why I should be assigned to the Masters, not just because I'm not at CBS, but because while I like golf, I don't think I'd bring anything particularly unique or needed to it. But I think every broadcaster would like to put a check next to that one, but it's one that will probably never happen.
But what is it about golf that interests you?
I think the setting, the atmosphere, the fact that the Masters is the one of the four majors that always takes place at the same place. And that place, regardless of how you feel about some of the other aspects, that place is a magnificent location. And it's one of the few things in golf where even the casual, or events in golf, where even the casual observer knows every hole. They know all the twists and turns. They feel familiar with it. And I think the individual aspect of golf, it's you against the course, you against yourself. Maybe it comes down to you against the other guy or woman, as the case may be. Very, very late, if it narrows down to two competitors or to a playoff. But there's an individual aspect of it that makes it different from other sports.
I guess I should have clarified my question to you. The event that actually took place, so an individual event, not necessarily covered the Masters in general or the U.S. Open, but was there a moment in sports, like Hank Aaron's 715th home run?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm not associated with boxing, but the first Ali Frazier fight or the third, the Thrilla in Manila, I think were epic events. So that's something. Certainly I wouldn't be needed, and neither would you or anybody else, because Al Michaels had it handled. But the Miracle on Ice is something that transcends sports. And people remember it, I think, because in a different way than they remember other events, because at least from an American perspective, every single viewer was rooting for the same side. It's not like the Cavaliers against the Warriors or the Patriots against the Falcons or the Indians against the Cubs, where there might be differing rooting interests. Everybody was rooting for the same side, and everybody was surprised by the result. I mean, those are a couple that come to mind.
He's Bob Costas joining us, Dan Patrick's show. But we were talking about this yesterday. Do you like dynasties or do you like parody? And it feels like some sports are fine with parody and other sports like dynasties. Where do you stand?
I like dynasties. I don't necessarily prefer them to parody, but I'm fine with dynasties as long as they are achieved in a way where the fan thinks this is a result of a confluence of circumstances, resourcefulness, intelligent management, and the alignment of the stars. You know, no one felt when the Chicago Bulls had their run that there was something inherent about the NBA that kept the team in San Antonio or Utah, for goodness sakes. I mean, that was the last two of the six. They played Utah, which played them tough. Nobody felt that the circumstances conspired to stack the deck. When the Yankees had their run in the late 90s and at the turn of the century, they were a very admirable team with Joe Torre at the helm and Derek Jeter and Mariano Rivera and others kind of exemplifying that team. But still, the deck was stacked at that point, the way baseball's economics were, so that dynasties in baseball, or it wasn't so much who won, it was how many teams had no chance to win. I don't think anyone believes, no matter how many times the Patriots get to the Super Bowl, that the rest of the league has no chance. And most of those Super Bowls have been very close. In fact, all of them have been close that the Patriots have been involved in. So I don't have any problem with dynasties as long as the feeling isn't that the deck is stacked.
Are the Golden State Warriors good for the NBA?
Oh, sure. I think that Adam Silver is probably in search of some sort of mechanism that makes it even less likely that a player like Kevin Durant, in the prime of his career, will be like somebody walking into the schoolyard and seeing which team is the better of the two and saying, "I'll go with them." But obviously, people are fascinated by Golden State. The way they play is entertaining, and if there is a Golden State-Cleveland rematch in the NBA Finals, I think that will rate very highly with the rest of the country, not just with Ohio and the Bay Area.
It always sounds blasphemous to people who were there when Jordan was playing. You, of course, were hosting the NBA back then, and I covered those when I was working for the mothership. But I feel like LeBron is not beloved like Jordan was or still is. But is there something that LeBron can do that gets him into that conversation of greatest ever? That Brady forced his way into that with Montana and maybe surpassed him because he went one more title. But can you see a scenario where LeBron is recognized as the greatest player of all time?
I think that discussion's already taking place. Although on balance, Jordan still gets more votes than LeBron does. A lot of knowledgeable observers I've heard say if you're forced to choose, they might give a slight edge to LeBron because of his combination of size and passing ability and whatnot, and the fact that he's been able to go from one team to another and win championships with it. But that's part of the reason why perhaps he's not as beloved outside Cleveland, where once he was hated and then he was embraced again, where perhaps he's not as beloved as Jordan because there was a consistency with Jordan. North Carolina, the dream team is part of it. It was a different era, a one-of-a-kind type situation with the dream team, and then all those championships. So I guess the only thing that LeBron can do is continue to win titles, pull even or surpass somehow Jordan's 6 numerically. And then there'll always be people who point out that Jordan might have won 7 or 8 had he not gone off to play baseball.
Future of host cities for the Olympics is what, in your opinion?
I think there's going to be a shorter list of cities interested in hosting the Olympics because there are so many problems associated with it in terms of security, and often cities or nations are left with debts and with venues that aren't used because those localities don't care about those particular sports, and yet they have to be built for the Olympics, which is why Los Angeles is well suited for 2024 because a lot of those venues are already in place. And it's unlikely that L.A. Or the state of California or the federal government of the United States, to the extent that they help, is going to go bankrupt over helping to support or put on an Olympics.
I'll leave you with this. My research team, the I-Team. Paulie, you had an item here that Bob once gave a tip to a guy delivering a pizza. What was that tip?
Yeah, we heard that you didn't have any cash on you. You just tipped a pizza guy out with an Emmy. True, untrue?
Is that true?
I did.
Okay.
And a guy named Stefano displays it proudly.
Okay, all right. Well, that's good. That's journalism right here. Journalism is not lost on this show, Bob. It's hard to find.
Absolutely not. There's a news item right there.
Safe travels. Congrats. I'll probably see you next week.
Is it clear that I had been awake 30 seconds before this interview began? I feel somewhat incoherent.
The over-under, I think, was a little less than that. We were your wake-up call.
Close to the middle.
Yes. Bob, safe travels, bud. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.